Herons of Brussels, Part 1 of the Jack Ashley series, by Mike Chambers. Read by Mike Chambers. Jack Ashley stood in front of the baggage carousel in Brussels airport and watched it move slowly past him. There were no suitcases on it, and he began to wonder if he had made a mistake. Quickly looking up at the screen above him, he confirmed that this is where he should be, and to wait for his suitcase to arrive after his short flight from London. Gradually, one or two other passengers from the same flight came and joined him. If I've made a mistake, then I'm not the only one, he thought to himself. Suddenly the first case dropped from the chute and was quickly followed by another, and then more and more. He waited patiently, looking for his black suitcase to appear. He would recognize it immediately, as it was old and had a recognizable scratch along one side. This was the result of too many flights and too many baggage handlers throwing it into the back of the plane. One by one, the different suitcases passed him by until he finally recognized his own. He waited until it came close and then, in one quick move, grabbed the handle and pulled it out onto the floor in front of him. Police Inspector Jack Ashley was used to travelling. Being a police officer in the London Metropolitan Police required him to travel a lot. This time, though, the trip was different. He was here in Brussels as an exchange officer with the Belgian Federal Police. It was a 6-month assignment, and one that he really didn't want to do, but the chance to escape the problems of London appealed to him. Quickly checking that he did in fact have the right suitcase, he pulled it up onto an upright position and began dragging it towards the exit doors. As he passed through the automatic doors, he went quickly through into the arrivals lounge. He had nothing to declare to customs, and as he was a British citizen, there were very few checks. His passport had been checked, and now he was free to pass out of the airport. Once in the arrivals hall, a variety of different people were waiting along the barriers, looking for their friends and families. He walked quickly through, and the other passengers followed him. He made his way towards the airport exit. He was here on business, and he didn't expect anyone to be waiting to greet him. "Jack!" a voice suddenly called out. "Jack Ashley! Over here!" A man's voice called out from the back of the crowd. He looked towards the crowd and saw a young man waving his hand in the air. "Over here!" the man shouted enthusiastically. Jack looked over towards the waving man and, pulling his suitcase, headed towards him. He broke through the people surrounding the arrivals area and walked in the man's direction. The young man also pushed his way through the people and came to greet him. "Christopher Stryton," he said, holding out his hand. "I'm your liaison officer here in Belgium." "Jack Ashley," he replied, shaking the other man's hand. "Yes, I know," said Chris, looking directly at him. "I seen your profile." They shook hands. "Did you have a good flight?" Chris asked. "Yes," Jack replied. "It was only about an hour flying time. I've been here before." Chris let go of his hand. "Yes," he said, "I've been in London. Sometimes I use the Eurostar, but flying is easier." They made their way through the airport exit and out onto the causeway in front of the airport. "The car is this way," indicated Chris, pointing towards the multi-story car park at the opposite side of the road. They crossed the road and Chris went towards the automatic car payment machine. He placed a parking ticket in the machine and then inserted his bank card to pay for the car. Pressing in his PIN number, the payment was accepted and the ticket was returned. "We're on the second floor," he said. Jack followed him into the lift and they travelled up to the second floor. Leaving the lift behind, Chris indicated to the left. "The car is over here." They approached an Audi and Chris pressed the remote key in his hand. The lights flashed briefly and the back of the car opened slightly. "You can put your bag in the back," Chris said, lifting the back of the car and indicating the empty space. He quickly loaded his suitcase into the back of the car and closed the lid. Chris moved into the driver's seat and Jack sat next to him. Without a word, Chris slipped the key into the dashboard and the car burst into life. He guided the car out of the parking space and headed towards the exit. Jack was silent and looked out of the window. Following the arrows on the floor, Chris eased the car towards the car park exit. He stopped at the barrier and inserted the ticket into the machine. A few seconds later, the barrier raised and he drove out into the bright sunshine. The car sped away from the airport and towards Brussels. Chris put his foot down, and the car gained speed, winding in and out of the traffic. Occasionally he sounded his horn and swore at the driver in front of him. When the car in front didn't move away too quickly, he indicated something to the driver. Jack didn't understand what he said, but he knew enough to realize it wasn't pleasant. They joined a major road into the center of Brussels and started heading towards the city. Ahead of them, the traffic light had turned red, and Chris put his foot heavily down on the brake, and the car came to a halt. He tapped the wheel in front of him impatiently. "Do you like Brussels?" he asked quickly, turning towards Jack. Yes, he replied. "It's an interesting city." "It is interesting," replied Chris. "But I choose not to live here." "Really?" asked Jack. "Well, why?" Chris shrugged. "I don't like living in the city. I prefer living outside in the countryside." Jack nodded. "So where do you live?" "In a village just outside Antwerp. My partner and I have an apartment." The lights changed to green and the car sped forward. Chris expertly navigated between the cars, occasionally letting out a phrase or two at the drivers in front of him. "And you, Jack?" he asked. "Where do you live?" In London," he replied nonchalantly. North London." "Are you married?" asked Chris, turning towards him. "I was," he replied. "We're divorced now. It was some time ago." "Oh," replied Chris. "I'm sorry. Is that why you're here? To get away?" No, not really," replied Jack. "I just needed a change from London. Something else to do." Chris nodded. The car seemed to speed faster and faster as they approached the city. "Do you know why you're here?" asked Chris. It's an exchange, as simple as that," Jack replied. Yes, you could say that. The truth is that we need your help here in Belgium. We have a problem that we would rather have not to deal with." "What kind of problem?" asked Jack. "A British problem, and it is causing us problems. We needed you to come over to sort it out." "What kind of problem?" he asked. "I'll explain it later. But we need your help. So, here you are."